The night was cool, the church compound silent except for the faint sound of crickets. Inside the main hall, the big chandelier lights had already been switched off, and only the small bulbs around the altar were glowing faintly. Daniel, a young man in his early 20s, stood in front of the choir stand arranging hymn books. He was tall, handsome, and known by everyone for his cheerful smile. But that night, Daniel's heart was restless. For reasons he couldn't explain, he had volunteered to stay behind after midweek service to help tidy up the church. The pastor's wife, Madame Grace, also stayed back. She said she wanted to check if the children's department was properly cleaned. At first, Daniel thought nothing of it, until their paths crossed near the altar. "Daniel," she called softly, her voice echoing through the empty hall. "Thank you for always helping. Many youths today don't care about God's work." Daniel smiled, lowering his gaze respectfully. "It's nothing, Ma. The church is God's house. I'm just doing my little." But something in the way she looked at him unsettled him. Her eyes lingered on him longer than usual, almost as if she was searching his soul. He quickly excused himself, pretending to be busy with hymnals, but as he turned, he could feel her eyes still on him. That moment passed, but it was the beginning of what no one in the church could have ever imagined. By the following week, Daniel began to notice strange things. Whenever Madame Grace greeted him after service, her hand would rest on his shoulder a little longer than necessary. Whenever she smiled, it wasn't the usual motherly smile he knew. It carried something deeper, something dangerous. Daniel tried to convince himself that he was overthinking. Maybe she just likes me like her own son, he thought. But deep down, he knew there was something more. One Sunday, after a powerful sermon by Pastor James, the whole church erupted into praises. The drums, the claps, the singing all filled the atmosphere with joy. Daniel was leading a chorus, his voice strong, his eyes closed as he lifted his hands. When he opened them briefly, his gaze met Madame Grace's. She wasn't clapping, she wasn't dancing, she was just staring at him. And in that stare was something Daniel didn't want to interpret. He quickly looked away, his heart beating fast. "This is wrong," he told himself. "This is the pastor's wife. She's like a mother. I need to be careful." But little did he know that carefulness was about to slip away. 2 weeks later, the church organized an all-night prayer. After hours of singing and praying, people began to leave in groups. Daniel, tired but still strong, stayed behind to help lock the choir room. As he stepped out into the corridor, he almost bumped into Madame Grace. She was standing there, waiting. "Young man," she said, her tone softer than ever, "thank you for always helping. Many youths today don't care about God's work." Daniel smiled, nervously. "Thank you, Ma. May God continue to bless you." But as he turned to go, she held his wrist. Daniel froze. The church was almost empty, and her hand was warm, firm, and lingering. "Daniel," she whispered, her eyes searching his, "don't ever change. You are special." Daniel pulled back gently, mumbling a quick goodbye, but his mind was already troubled. That night, sleep refused to come. He kept replaying the scene in his head. Why would the pastor's wife hold him like that? Why would her words feel so heavy? Days turned into weeks, and the tension only grew stronger. Each time Daniel tried to avoid her, life found a way to push them together. Choir practice, youth meetings, and church cleaning. And each time, her looks became bolder, her compliments sweeter, her presence heavier. One evening after a youth fellowship, it happened. The rain was pouring heavily, trapping everyone in the church. People rushed out one by one, some sharing umbrellas, others running through the rain. Daniel had no umbrella, so he stayed back, waiting for the rain to stop. When he looked around, he realized only one other person was left, Madame Grace. She smiled, moving closer. "Looks like we're both stranded," she said. Daniel's heart began to race. "Yes, Ma, it seems so." The rain beat harder, drumming against the roof like thunder. Inside, silence fell between them, a silence filled with unspoken thoughts, forbidden desires, and dangerous temptations. Daniel stood there torn between running into the rain or staying put. But before he could decide, Madame Grace stepped closer, too close. He could smell her perfume, feel her presence. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling, "do you know sometimes life puts us in situations we can't explain?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes, ma, but—" Before he could finish, lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a loud thunderclap. She flinched, grabbing his arm for safety. But instead of letting go, she held on, tight. And in that moment, something happened that Daniel would regret for the rest of his life. That rainy night was the beginning of a dangerous journey, one that would shake the very foundation of the church, destroy trust, and expose secrets no one ever expected. And as Daniel lay in bed later that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought haunted him. This was a mistake, but why does it feel like it can't stop here?
Daniel avoided church for 2 days after that rainy night. His heart was heavy and his conscience screamed louder than the morning cock crew. He could still feel her grip on his arm, still hear her trembling whisper, and worst of all, still remember what followed. He didn't tell anyone. How could he? Who would believe that the pastor's wife, the woman everyone respected, the woman who led women's fellowship, who preached holiness and submission, would cross such a line? And who would believe that he, Daniel, the choir leader, had allowed it? But no matter how hard he tried, the memory clung to him like wet clothes. It was supposed to be a mistake, a one-time weakness. Yet, the biggest problem was not the act itself. The biggest problem was that Madame Grace didn't regret it. The following Sunday, Daniel sat in the choir stand, his voice shaky as he led the praise session. His eyes refused to look towards the front row, where Pastor James and Madame Grace always sat. But at one point, against his will, his gaze betrayed him. There she was, calm, smiling, looking at him like nothing had happened. But beneath that smile, Daniel saw it, something dangerous. Not shame, not regret, desire. When the service ended, she walked up to him, her voice low but firm. "Daniel, I need to see you after choir practice tomorrow." Daniel froze. He wanted to refuse, he wanted to run. But when she looked at him with those eyes, words filled him. He simply nodded. The next day, choir practice dragged longer than usual. The youths laughed and sang, unaware of the storm brewing. When everyone left, Daniel remained behind, pretending to rearrange microphones. Slowly, Madame Grace walked in, closing the door behind her. For a moment, silence filled the room. She looked at him, he looked at the floor. "Daniel," she said softly, "do you regret what happened?" Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, yes, it was wrong. But when he raised his eyes to her face, the words died in his throat. Instead, he whispered, "It was a mistake." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Maybe to you, but not to me." Daniel's heart raced. "Ma, please, if anyone finds out—" "No one will," she cut him off. "I'm not careless. And Daniel, I need you to understand something. What I feel, I cannot explain, but I know one thing. You make me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years." Those words were like fire. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. "This is wrong. Pastor trusts me. The church looks up to me. I can't." But she stepped closer, her voice calm yet commanding. "And yet, you already did." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep again. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his face, heard his words, felt his presence. He prayed, he cried, he begged God for strength. But with every prayer came another memory. It wasn't just temptation anymore. It was a battle, a secret fire burning inside him. Weeks passed, and what was supposed to be buried refused to die. Madame Grace became bolder. She found ways to draw near, offering him food after service, complimenting his outfits, sending him small notes that only he could understand. At first, Daniel resisted, but slowly, resistance turned to weakness, and weakness turned to silence. And in that silence, sin grew stronger. One Friday evening, Pastor James called Daniel into his office. His heart jumped. Had the pastor found out? But no, the meeting was about something else entirely. Pastor James smiled warmly. "My son, I've been watching you. Your dedication, your energy, your humility, it amazes me. I see leadership in you. I see a future pastor." Daniel's throat dried up. If only Pastor James knew what his future pastor was hiding. The older man leaned closer. "That's why I want you to spend more time with me and my family. You are like a son to me now." Daniel forced a smile, nodding slowly, but his heart was breaking into pieces. The pastor was welcoming him closer, while Daniel was secretly betraying him. That night, Madame Grace sent him a text. "He trusts you so much. Don't ever disappoint him and don't ever leave me." Daniel stared at the message for hours, torn between loyalty and lust, faith and failure. The real twist came 2 weeks later. After a powerful Sunday service, Daniel rushed out to avoid Madame Grace, but she caught up with him in the parking lot. She handed him a food flask, whispering with a smile, "Your favorite, don't let it get cold." Daniel wanted to refuse, but before he could speak, someone called from behind. It was Sister Mary, the youth president, and she had seen everything. Her eyes narrowed as she looked from Madame Grace to Daniel. Something in her expression said she suspected more than just food was being exchanged. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. If Sister Mary spoke up, everything could be exposed. That was the moment Daniel realized what started as a mistake had become a trap with no easy way out. And from that day forward, the question was no longer if the secret would be exposed, but when.
The sun was already sinking low when Daniel got home that Sunday evening. He locked his door and dropped the food flask on the table without even opening it. His stomach churned, but not from hunger. The image of Sister Mary's sharp eyes still haunted him. She had seen it, Madame Grace handing him food, smiling too warmly, whispering too softly. To anyone else, it might look innocent, but Sister Mary was not just anyone. She was smart, observant, and deeply protective of the church. Daniel sat on his bed, head in his hands. What if she speaks? What if she tells Pastor James? What if the whole church finds out? The thought was too heavy to bear. Meanwhile, across town, Sister Mary sat in her small living room, staring at her Bible, but not reading it. Her mind was on Daniel. She had always respected him, dedicated, humble, and gifted. But lately, she had noticed things. The way Madame Grace looked at him, the way Daniel avoided her eyes sometimes, and now the food exchange. Something is not right, she whispered to herself. Lord, open my eyes. The following week, Sister Mary decided to watch more closely. During choir practice, she kept her gaze fixed on Daniel. She noticed how uneasy he became whenever Madame Grace entered the hall. She noticed how Madame Grace's compliments toward him always sounded too personal. After practice, Sister Mary approached him. Daniel, can we talk? Daniel's heart skipped. Sure, Sister Mary. They walked outside, the cool evening breeze brushing against their faces. For a while she said nothing. Then she turned to him, her eyes sharp. Daniel, I know something is wrong. You're not yourself these days. Your spirit feels distracted. Daniel forced a laugh. Maybe I'm just tired, Too much work, too much singing. But she wasn't convinced. She stepped closer. Daniel, I saw what happened last Sunday between you and Pastor's wife. Daniel's chest tightened. He swallowed hard. So what? The food, the way she looked at you. Her voice lowered. Daniel, if there's something you need to tell me, I'm here. Don't let the devil use secrets to destroy you. Daniel shook his head quickly. No, Sister Mary, there's nothing. Nothing at all. She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. All right. But Daniel, remember this. Secrets have a way of shouting louder than confessions. Be careful. Daniel walked away, his legs trembling. Sister Mary didn't know the truth, but her suspicions were like a rope tightening around his neck. That night, he couldn't sleep again. He prayed, but his prayers felt empty. Every time he tried to sing, guilt pressed down on his chest. And yet, despite all the guilt, part of him couldn't deny the strange pull he still felt toward Madame Grace. The tension worsened when Pastor James called Daniel again, this time to his house. Come for dinner, he said warmly. You are family now. Daniel wanted to refuse, but he couldn't. Saying no would raise questions. That evening, Daniel arrived at the pastor's home. The table was set, laughter filled the air, and Pastor James was full of stories about ministry. But Daniel could barely eat. Across the table, Madame Grace sat, her eyes occasionally meeting his with that same dangerous fire. And sitting just 2 chairs away was Sister Mary, who had also been invited. The room felt like a battlefield. Pastor James laughed and talked, oblivious to the silent war happening right under his nose. Daniel kept his head down, pushing food around his plate. Madame Grace smiled too often. Sister Mary watched everything. At one point, Pastor James excused himself to take a phone call. The moment he stepped out, Madame Grace leaned slightly toward Daniel and whispered, "You haven't touched your food. You'll fall sick if you don't." It was innocent on the surface, but the way she said it, the way her hand brushed his under the table, was anything but innocent. And Sister Mary saw it. Her eyes widened, her lips tightening as she looked from Madame Grace to Daniel. After dinner, as Daniel prepared to leave, Sister Mary stopped him outside the gate. Her voice was firm, almost trembling. "Daniel, what is going on between you and Pastor's wife?" Daniel froze, staring at her. She had cornered him. He could lie again, but her eyes seemed to peer straight into his soul. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, a voice called from behind. It was Pastor James. "What are you two talking about?" he asked casually, smiling as he walked toward them. Daniel's heart nearly exploded. Sister Mary's face went pale. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Sister Mary forced a smile. "Nothing, sir. Just quiet matters." Pastor James nodded, still smiling, and walked back inside. But as soon as he was gone, Sister Mary grabbed Daniel's arm and whispered urgently, "Daniel, listen to me. If you don't stop whatever this is, destruction is coming. And when it comes, it won't spare you." She let go of him and walked away, leaving Daniel trembling under the night sky. That night, Daniel finally admitted to himself that he was trapped in a web too dangerous to ignore. But little did he know, the storm was only beginning. And soon, it wouldn't just be Sister Mary's suspicion he had to worry about. It would be something far worse.
Daniel woke up the next morning with swollen eyes. He hadn't slept. Sister Mary's warning echoed in his head like church bells. Destruction is coming, and when it comes, it won't spare you. He dragged himself to the church that afternoon for choir practice. Every step felt like he was walking into a trap. When he reached the hall, the choristers were already practicing, their voices rising in harmony. Daniel tried to join in, but his voice cracked. His spirit was restless. And then it happened. Halfway through the practice, the main microphone stopped working. The sound system suddenly went dead. Everyone gasped. Daniel, being in charge of the choir, rushed to fix it. As he bent down, sweat dripping from his forehead, a small folded piece of paper fell out of his hymn book. He froze. He hadn't put anything there. Slowly, he picked it up and opened it. Written in Madame Grace's familiar handwriting were the words, "Meet me in the vestry after practice. It's urgent." Daniel's heart slammed against his chest. He quickly shoved the paper into his pocket before anyone noticed. But when he raised his eyes, Sister Mary was staring straight at him. After practice, Daniel tried to slip away quietly, but his legs betrayed him and carried him to the vestry. Madame Grace was waiting, her face tense. "Daniel," she whispered, shutting the door, "we need to be careful. I think Sister Mary suspects something." Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "Ma, I can't keep living like this. I feel like God is far from me, and Pastor James, he trusts me too much, and betraying him." She moved closer, her voice low and urgent. "Daniel, listen to me. You don't understand. My marriage is empty. Your pastor, my husband, he is a good man, yes, but with him I feel like a stranger. With you I feel alive." Daniel shook his head. "But this is wrong. What if people find out? What if God exposes us?" Before Madame Grace could answer, the vestry door creaked. Both of them turned sharply. It was Sister Mary. Her eyes darted from Daniel to Madame Grace, then back again. Her lips trembled. "So, it's true." The air grew heavy, silence crushing them all. Daniel's legs felt weak. Madame Grace straightened her shoulders, her face calm, but her eyes fierce. "Mary," she said in a steady tone, "you saw nothing. Do you understand? Nothing." But Sister Mary shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "No, I can't pretend. This is not just about you. This is about the church, about the pastor, about God. How could you?" Daniel stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Please, Mary, listen." But she cut him off. "Don't call me that. Daniel, I respected you. I defended you when people doubted you. And now this?" She turned sharply and stormed out, her footsteps echoing through the hall. That night, Daniel couldn't breathe. His secret wasn't just his and Madame Grace's anymore. It had another witness. Sister Mary had seen enough to destroy everything. The next day, he tried to find her, but she avoided him completely. In church, she didn't greet him. During choir practice, she ignored his instructions. Her silence was louder than any sermon. Daniel's fear grew by the hour. Every time Pastor James called him my son, guilt stabbed him deeper. Every time the congregation clapped for his singing, he felt like a fraud. And then the unthinkable happened. On Friday evening, just as Daniel was locking the choir room, Pastor James himself walked in. "Daniel," he said warmly, "I want you to take charge of Sunday's main worship, the whole service, lead from beginning to end. I believe in you." Daniel's throat got dry. "Sir? Me?" Pastor James clapped his back. "Yes, you. God has given you a gift, and I trust you completely." Daniel forced a smile, but inside he was crumbling. If he knew the truth, he would never trust me again. As he left the church that evening, he saw Sister Mary standing near the gate. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. Instead, she said quietly, "Daniel, God will not be mocked. Prepare yourself." And she walked away. That Sunday came and the church was packed. The atmosphere was charged with worship. Daniel stood at the altar, microphone in hand, but his voice trembled, sweat dripping down his forehead, and his eyes darted around nervously. Halfway through the worship, just as the drums were beating hard and people were clapping, Sister Mary suddenly stood up from the choir stand. The church went silent. As she stepped forward, her face pale but determined, she raised her hand and said, "I have something to say." The congregation froze. Pastor James frowned in confusion. Madame Grace's face drained of color. Daniel's entire body shook. And in that tense silence, every secret, every lie, every mistake was about to be dragged into the open.
The church was silent. Every eye was fixed on Sister Mary as she stood in front of the congregation. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. "I have something to say," she repeated, louder this time. Daniel's knees felt weak. Madame Grace sat stiffly in her chair, her hands clasped tightly on her lap. Pastor James looked bewildered, his Bible still open on his knees. For a long second, no one moved. The drums stopped. The choir froze. Even the ushers stood still. Daniel whispered under his breath, "God, please, let this cup pass." Sister Mary took a deep breath and began. "There is a spirit in this church that is trying to destroy us. A spirit of deception. A spirit of sin." Gasps filled the hall. Some members covered their mouths, others exchanged quick glances. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. "She's about to say it. She's about to expose me." But then she turned her eyes to the congregation and said, "That spirit wants to divide us, but we must not let it win. We must pray. We must return to holiness." A wave of relief swept through the hall. People nodded, some clapped softly. Others shouted amen. Daniel nearly collapsed. Madame Grace exhaled deeply, her eyes narrowing with both relief and suspicion. Pastor James stood, smiling proudly. "Ah, Sister Mary, God bless you.
You've spoken well. Indeed, the church must stay holy. Let us rise and pray." The whole congregation stood and began to pray loudly, but Daniel's heart was still racing. Why didn't she expose them? What was she planning? After service, Madame Grace found Daniel at the back of the church. "She knows," she whispered urgently, "but she's holding back. You need to be careful." Daniel stared at her, sweat off his brow. "Ma, maybe this is God giving us a second chance. We need to stop. We need to end this before it's too late." But Madame Grace shook her head. "Daniel, it's too late to end it. She will not stay silent forever. We have to be smart." Her words made Daniel's stomach twist. Smart or deeper in trouble? Later that evening, Sister Mary sent Daniel a text. "Meet me, tomorrow, alone. We need to talk." Daniel's hands shook as he read it. He couldn't tell if she was planning to warn him or destroy him. The next day, they met in the church garden. The compound was quiet, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Sister Mary's face was serious. "Daniel," she began, her voice calm but firm. "I know what's going on between you and Pastor's wife." Daniel's chest tightened. "Please, Mary, don't." She raised her hand. "I haven't told anyone, but you can't continue like this. You're destroying yourself. And if this comes out, it will destroy Pastor James, the church, everyone." Daniel looked down, shame flooding his heart. "I know. I don't want this anymore. But she won't stop." She sighed. "Then you have to stop. Even if it means walking away from the choir. Even if it means leaving the church for a while. You must choose God over your weakness." Her words pierced him like arrows. But before Daniel could respond, a voice interrupted them. "Mary, Daniel, what's going on here?" They turned sharply. Pastor James was standing a few steps away, looking at them with confusion. Daniel's blood ran cold. Sister Mary stammered, "Pastor, we were just talking." Pastor James frowned. "Talking? About what? Why do you both look so serious?" Daniel's throat dried. Sister Mary's hands trembled. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, Sister Mary forced a smile. "Just choir matters, sir, nothing else." Pastor James studied their faces, suspicion flickering in his eyes. But finally, he nodded. "All right. Be careful not to overwork yourselves. God bless you both." He walked away slowly, glancing back once before disappearing into the office. As soon as he left, Daniel collapsed onto the bench with his head in his hands. "Mary, this is too much. I can't keep living like this." She touched his shoulder gently. "Then end it, Daniel, before God ends it for you." Her words echoed in his soul. But while Daniel wrestled with guilt and fear, Madame Grace had her own plans. That evening, she called Daniel and said firmly, "Meet me tomorrow. We can't let Mary or anyone else stand between us. If you think you can just walk away, you don't know me." Daniel's hand trembled as he held the phone. Her voice was not just desperate anymore. It was dangerous. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The real storm was not Sister Mary. The real storm was Madame Grace herself.
Daniel sat on his bed late into the night, the phone call replaying in his head. Madame Grace's voice had been sharp, almost threatening. "If you think you can just walk away, you don't know me." The words echoed like thunder in his mind. He knew she was serious. He knew she would not let him go so easily. He pressed his palms to his face, whispering, "God, why did I let it start at all?" But guilt was a heavy chain, and fear an even heavier one. The next morning, Daniel dragged himself to church for midweek service. He hoped Madame Grace would stay away, but she was there, radiant as always, her smile too bright, her eyes lingering too long on him. After the service, she cornered him behind the children's department. "Daniel, we need to talk." He shook his head firmly. "No, I can't do this anymore. People are starting to notice. Sister Mary already suspects. If Pastor finds out..." But she stepped closer, her eyes flashing. "Pastor will never know. Do you hear me? He's too blind to see what's right under his nose. But if you ever try to leave me, Daniel..." She dropped her voice to a whisper. "I will not go down alone." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "It means if you betray me, I'll make sure everyone knows, and I'll make sure you suffer for it." A cold shiver ran down Daniel's spine. Madame Grace wasn't just desperate, she was dangerous. That evening, Daniel confided in Sister Mary. They met secretly at the back of the church, under the shadow of the mango tree. "She's threatening me," Daniel admitted, his voice breaking. "She says if I try to end it, she will destroy me. Mary, I feel trapped." Sister Mary's eyes softened. "Daniel, sin always traps. But listen to me, you are not powerless. If you confess, if you bring it into the light, it loses its grip." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, no. If Pastor finds out, I'll be ruined. My family will be disgraced. Everyone will hate me." Mary sighed. "But if you keep hiding, it will ruin you even more. Secrets don't stay secrets forever." Daniel buried his face in his hands, trembling. 2 days later, the first real consequence struck. It was Sunday morning. The church was packed. The choir was alive with songs of joy. Daniel led powerfully, but inside he was broken. After the service, Pastor James called Daniel to his office. His tone was calm, but his eyes were serious. "Daniel," he said, folding his hands on the table, "I'm like a son to you, but I need to ask you something. Are you all right?" Daniel's stomach dropped. Yes, sir, I'm fine." Pastor James leaned forward. "Are you sure? Because people are beginning to whisper. They say you seem distracted. Some even say you and my wife are too close." Daniel's breath caught. His heart nearly stopped. "Sir, no, there's nothing like that. I respect Mama too much. People are just misinterpreting things." Pastor James studied him for a long moment, then sighed. I trust you, Daniel, but be careful. The devil works in small ways before he brings big shame." Daniel forced a nod, but his chest burned. He staggered out of the office, his whole body shaking. Later that night, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. When he opened it, his blood froze. It was a photo of him and Madame Grace together in the vestry, weeks ago. Not touching, but too close, too suspicious. And beneath it were the words, "Truth will come out soon. Prepare yourself." Daniel's hands trembled so hard the phone almost slipped. Who had taken the picture? Who was sending these messages? His heart screamed one answer: Sister Mary. The next day, he confronted her in the church compound. "Mary, was it you? Did you send me that picture?" Her eyes widened in shock. "What picture?" Daniel showed her the phone. She gasped. "Daniel, I swear it wasn't me, but this means someone else knows."
Daniel's knees weakened. No, 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 this can't be happening. Mary placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Daniel, I told you, sin shouts. Someone else has seen you. And if they've already started sending pictures, it is only a matter of time before everything explodes. Daniel felt the ground beneath him shift. The noose was tightening. His secret was no longer safe. And this time, it wasn't just Madame Grace or Sister Mary. Someone else was watching.
Daniel barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of the photo returned. Him and Madame Grace in the vestry, caught in a moment that should never have happened. And the message beneath it, truth will come out soon. Prepare yourself. His chest felt heavy, his throat dry. Who had taken that picture, and what did they want? By morning, his worst fear came true. Another message arrived. This time it read, "Bring 150,000 naira by Friday if you want this photo to stay hidden. If you don't, the whole church will see it." Daniel's hands shook. He had never felt so trapped in his life. He paced his small room, running his fingers through his hair. Where would he get that kind of money? His allowance barely covered food and transport. He thought of borrowing, but who could he explain it to? And then his phone buzzed again. "Don't tell anyone, not even her. If you do, I'll release it immediately." Daniel dropped the phone onto his bed, his heart pounding like a drum. The invisible hand pulling his strings was tightening its grip. That evening, he went to Madame Grace's house. She welcomed him with her usual smile, but he was too shaken to respond. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing. Daniel hesitated, remembering the warning, "Don't tell anyone." But the burden was too heavy. He blurted out, "Someone has a picture of us. They are threatening to expose it if I don't pay." Her face went pale. She gripped the edge of the chair. "What? A picture? Daniel, are you sure?" He nodded miserably. "They want 150,000 naira by Friday." Madame Grace stood, pacing the room. "No, no, 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 this can't be happening. Who could it be? Did you tell Mary?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I didn't, but maybe she—" Madame Grace's voice hardened. "Don't blame her yet. Whoever it is, they've seen us. And if they expose us, it won't just be you that suffers. It will be me, my husband, my children. Everything will scatter." She stopped pacing, her eyes suddenly cold. "Daniel, we cannot let that happen." The next few days were torture. Daniel avoided everyone, his spirit broken. During choir practice, he could barely sing. His once bright voice now sounded weak. Members whispered behind his back. Sister Mary noticed. She cornered him after practice. "Daniel, what's going on? You look like you're dying inside." He shook his head. "Nothing." "Don't lie to me," she pressed. "You're in danger, aren't you?" Daniel's lips trembled, but he said nothing. He remembered the warning. If he told her, everything would be over. Instead, he turned away. "Pray for me, Mary. Just pray for me." She watched him walk away, her heart heavy with suspicion. Friday came too quickly. Daniel had not been able to raise the money. His head throbbed as he sat in his room, staring at the clock. At exactly 7 p.m., his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was a bomb. "Since you didn't pay, watch what happens on Sunday." Daniel's blood ran cold. That Sunday morning, the church was filled to the brim. Worship was loud. People were dancing. The atmosphere charged. Pastor James was in high spirits. But Daniel couldn't focus. His palms were sweaty, his chest tight. Every second felt like the calm before a storm. And then, just as Pastor James took the stage to preach, a young usher rushed in, holding a brown envelope. He handed it to the pastor. The congregation watched as Pastor James opened it. His eyes scanned the contents, and suddenly his face hardened. The envelope slipped from his hand, falling to the floor. Photographs scattered across the stage. Photographs of Daniel. Photographs of Madame Grace. Together. Too close. Too damning. The church gasped in a unison. Murmurs filled the hall. Madame Grace's face drained of blood. Daniel felt the ground tilt beneath him. And Pastor James slowly turned his head toward both of them, his eyes filled with shock, pain, and something even more dangerous.
The silence that fell over the church was heavy, suffocating. You could hear a pin drop. Every eye was fixed on the scattered photographs across the altar floor. Pastor James stood frozen, his hands trembling as he bent down to pick up the pictures. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. Finally, his voice rang out, shaking with fury. "Daniel, Grace, what is this?" The entire congregation turned in unison, their eyes searching. Madame Grace's lips quivered, her hands clutching her wrapper tightly. Daniel's chest heaved, his heart beat so loud he could hear it in his ears. I can explain," Daniel stammered, stepping forward, but his voice was swallowed by the angry murmurs that erupted across the hall. "Jesus, have mercy," someone shouted. "A shame to the church," another cried. "Pastor's wife with choir boy?" Gasps and whispers filled the air. Daniel's legs threatened to give way. Pastor James descended from the pulpit slowly, his eyes blazing with fire Daniel had never seen before. He stopped directly in front of him. "Is this true?" Pastor demanded, thrusting the pictures into Daniel's chest. "Tell me it's a lie. Tell me the devil forged these." Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. That silence was enough. Pastor James turned to his wife, his voice cracking. "Grace, my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, is this what you've been doing behind me?" Madame Grace fell to her knees, trembling. "James, please, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to..." But Pastor's roar cut her off. "A mistake? Weeks of meetings, nights of lies, a mistake?" The congregation was now in chaos. Some stood in shock, others wept, and a few raised their phones, recording the scandal. The scandal was no longer a secret. It was a wildfire spreading in real time. Daniel tried to step forward. "Pastor, please, I never wanted..." But Pastor James slapped him so hard across the face that the entire hall gasped. Daniel staggered backwards, holding his cheek, his head spinning. "You snake!" Pastor thundered. "I fed you, I clothed you, I called you my son, and this is how you repay me? By sleeping with my wife?" The word struck Daniel harder than the slap. His knees buckled and he collapsed on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Sister Mary rushed forward, trying to shield Daniel. "Pastor, please, calm down. Let's not do this in front of the church." "But move out of my way, Mary," Pastor roared, his face red with rage. "This boy is a Judas, and she," he pointed at his wife, shaking with fury, "she is a Delilah, and the devil has used both of them to try and destroy this ministry." Madame Grace was now wailing loudly, clutching at her husband's feet. "James, forgive me. Please forgive me. I was weak. I was lonely. You were always busy with the church and the people, and I..." "Shut up," Pastor yelled, jerking his leg away from her grip. The elders of the church rushed in, trying to calm the situation, but the congregation had already descended into uproar. Some stood in shock, others wept, and a few raised their phones, recording the scandal. There was no one left who was ignorant. This was their war. The church grounds were turned to a battlefield where everyone had their sword and their truth. In the middle of the storm, Daniel lifted his face streaked with tears. His voice was weak, broken.
"Pastor, I am sorry. I don't have any excuse. Please, don't destroy me. Don't destroy my family." But Pastor James looked at him with eyes filled with burning betrayal. "From this day forward, you are no longer part of this church. Leave now before I lay my hands on you again." The words echoed like a death sentence. Daniel staggered to his feet, his entire body trembling. As he walked out of the church, whispers followed him like knives cutting his skin. "Shame! Disgrace! God will judge you!" He stumbled into the street outside, the sun blinding, the air thick. His chest felt like it would collapse. The weight of the world was on his shoulders. Back inside, Pastor James turned his fury on Madame Grace. His voice lowered, but the venom remained. "As for you, Grace, you will answer for this. You have shamed me before men and before God, and I swear to you, the world has not seen the end of this matter." By evening, the story was everywhere. Pictures leaked on WhatsApp groups, captions twisted the truth, and Daniel's name became a byword for scandal. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls he couldn't answer. His mother wept when she saw him, asking over and over, "Daniel, why? Why did you do this to us?" He had no answer. He just sat in silence, staring into the night. But deep down, one question tormented him more than any insult, more than pastor's rage, more than the shame he carried. Who sent those photographs? Because whoever they were not finished yet.
Or threaten him. He had become a walking ghost, alive but lifeless. One evening, as he sat on the edge of his bed staring blankly at the wall, a new message buzzed on his phone. He almost ignored it until he saw the words. "Do you want to know who exposed you?" Daniel froze. His hand shook as he clicked it open. "Meet me at the old bus park by 10 p.m. Don't tell anyone. If you want the truth, come alone." His heart pounded. He hesitated. Was this a trap? But the burning desire to know the face behind his downfall pushed him. He had lost everything already. What more could he lose? At exactly 10 p.m., Daniel walked into the deserted bus park. The night air was heavy, the street lights dim. A stray dog barked in the distance. Then he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. "Daniel!" a familiar voice called. He squinted into the shadows and gasped. It was Sister Mary. His mind spun. "Mary! You're the one who betrayed me?" Mary stepped forward, her face calm, her eyes cold. "Yes, Daniel, it was me." His mouth fell open. He staggered back, disbelief choking him. "But why? You were my friend. You said you cared." Mary's lips twisted into something between a smile and a snare. "Yes, I cared. I cared so much that it broke me to watch you destroy yourself. But Daniel, don't fool yourself. You think I didn't see what was happening between you and her? You think I didn't notice how you changed? The way you looked at her? The late night meetings? I knew everything." Daniel shook his head violently. "So you took pictures? You set me up? Mary, you've ruined my life." Mary's eyes glistened, not with regret, but with something darker. "No, Daniel, you ruined your own life. I only revealed the truth. I thought if the church saw who you really were, maybe I could save you from yourself." Daniel's voice cracked. "Save me? You destroyed me. The pastor hates me. My family is ashamed of me. I can't even walk in the street without people spitting at me. And you," his voice hardened, "you stood there pretending to care while stabbing me in the back." Mary stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you want to know the real truth, Daniel? The part you've been too blind to see?" Daniel's chest rose and fell rapidly. "What truth?" Her lips trembled before she spoke. "I loved you. I loved you more than anything, and I couldn't stand to see you waste yourself on her. The pastor's wife? A woman twice your age? Daniel, she was using you, and you were too weak to see it." Daniel felt as if the ground shifted beneath him.
Mary's eyes, which once looked at him with kindness, now burned with obsession. He whispered almost to himself, "All this because you loved me?" Mary's expression hardened again. "Yes, and I don't regret it, because now the truth is out. She will never touch you again, and maybe, just maybe, you will see that I was the only one who truly cared." Daniel staggered back, shaking his head. "No, no, Mary, this isn't love. This is madness." But Mary smiled faintly. "Call it whatever you want. At least now, you're free from her." Before Daniel could reply, headlights suddenly swept across the park. A car pulled up, its tires screeching. The door opened, and to Daniel's shock, Pastor James stepped out. Mary quickly bowed her head. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Pastor James' eyes locked on him with burning rage. His voice was low, deadly. "So, this is where the serpent hides." Daniel's knees grew weak. His mind raced. Why was Pastor here? Did Mary call him? Was this another trap? The pastor took a step forward, his voice thundering in the night. "Daniel, tonight you will answer for everything." Daniel's breath came in short, shallow breaths. Betrayed by Mary, cornered by Pastor James, alone in the dark bus park. He suddenly realized this was no longer about shame. It was about survival. And as Pastor's footsteps grew closer, Daniel knew one thing for certain. The storm had only just begun.
The bus park was silent, except for the sound of Pastor James's heavy footsteps crunching on gravel. His eyes glowed with a fire that could burn down the world. Daniel's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs were frozen. "Pastor, please," Daniel stammered, his voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. I swear, I didn't plan for any of this." "Shut your mouth," Pastor James roared, pointing a finger at him like a sword. "You defiled my home. You brought shame to my name, and now you want to explain?" Daniel's eyes darted to Mary, who stood to the side, her face pale, her hands trembling. For the first time, guilt flickered in her eyes, but she said nothing. Pastor James came closer, so close Daniel could feel his hot breath. "I gave you everything, Daniel. I treated you like a son, and this is how you repay me, by stealing my wife?" Tears blurred his vision. His voice cracked. "I didn't steal her, Pastor. It was never about you. I was weak, yes, but she came to me too. She wanted it as much as I did. I am guilty, but she is not innocent." Pastor's fist clenched. His entire body shook with rage. "Don't you dare speak her name. Don't you dare." The air between them was thick, ready to explode. Suddenly, Mary stepped forward. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Enough, both of you." Pastor James turned sharply. "Stay out of this, Mary." But Mary's chest rose and fell as if something inside her had finally broken. "No, I won't. Pastor, you deserve the truth too. I was the one who exposed them. I took the pictures. I leaked them." Daniel gasped, though he already knew. Hearing her confess aloud still cut deep. Pastor James's eyes widened. "You? Mary? Why?" Her lips trembled. "Because I loved him, and I hated watching him destroy himself with your wife. I thought if the truth came out, maybe he would be free. Maybe he would see me." Pastor's fist clenched. His entire body shook with rage. "Don't you dare speak her name. Don't you dare." The air between them was thick, ready to explode. Suddenly, Mary stepped forward. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Enough, both of you." Pastor James turned sharply. "Stay out of this, Mary." But Mary's chest rose and fell as if something inside her had finally broken. "No, I won't. Pastor, you deserve the truth too." Pastor James's face twisted in shock and disgust. He turned his gaze from her to Daniel, then back again. "So this was all a game? A conspiracy against me, my wife, this boy, and now you?" Mary shook her head frantically. "No, it wasn't a game. It was love." Pastor James laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. "Love? You call this love? You've all mocked me, made me a fool in front of the world." His eyes darkened. "But tonight, it ends." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small knife. Daniel's blood ran cold. "Pastor, no." The tension was unbearable. Mary gasped and stepped between them. "No, you can't do this." But Pastor's hand shook violently. His voice was low, filled with pain. "How can I live with this shame, Mary? How? They destroyed my home, my ministry, my life." Daniel's knees buckled. He fell to the ground, raising his hands. "If you must take someone, take me. Leave Mary out of this. Leave Grace out of this. I accept my punishment. Just don't let blood be on your hands." The words echoed in the night air. For a moment, Pastor James froze. His breathing grew ragged. His grip on the knife loosened. His eyes flickered with conflict, between rage and mercy. Then slowly, he dropped the knife to the ground. The metallic clang rang louder than thunder. Pastor James collapsed to his knees, his hands covering his face. His body shook with sobs. "Why, Daniel? Why? I gave my life to God. I gave my all to people. And in return, this is what I get." The anger dissolved, replaced by raw pain. Mary fell to the ground too, weeping. "I only wanted to save him, but I made everything worse. I am sorry, Pastor. I am sorry, Daniel." Daniel, still on his knees, felt tears streaming down his face. He whispered, "We are all guilty. We are all broken. But maybe this is God's way of showing us our weakness." The three of them sat in the cold night, broken souls bound by secrets, shame, and regret. The next Sunday, the church was full. Pastor James mounted the pulpit, his face heavy with sorrow. The congregation waited for fire and thunder, for judgment, but instead they heard something different. "My people," he began, voice trembling, "a great sin has entered my home, a betrayal so deep it nearly destroyed me. But I stand before you today, not as a perfect man, but as a broken one. We have all sinned, and if God can forgive us, then who are we not to forgive each other?" Gasps filled the air. Some cried. Some bowed their heads in shame. Pastor James paused and said, "Daniel will not be stoned. My wife will not be cast out. Sister Mary will not be destroyed. Instead, let this be a lesson to all of us that secrets fester, sin consumes, but truth can set us free." In that moment, the church was silent. Not in judgment, but in reflection. Daniel sat at the back, his heart heavy but strangely lighter than it had been in weeks. He knew his road to redemption would be long, but at least it had begun. Mary sat a few rows ahead, her face pale, her eyes red from weeping. She dared not look back at him. And Madame Grace, she sat quietly beside her husband, her hands clasped tightly, her face unreadable. The scandal would never be forgotten. The wounds would take years to heal. But one truth lingered in everyone's heart. Even the house of God is filled with broken people. And sometimes, the greatest test of faith is forgiveness.